Almost 600 people have been executed in Texas. J. Kelly Pinkerton, May 15, 1986. Pinkerton killed and essayed two women in Amarillo when he was just 17 years old. He would be the youngest man ever executed in Texas 7 years later at the age of 24. Sarah Dawn Lawrence, 30, was brutally murdered by Pinkerton on October 26, 1979. After essaying Lawrence, he stabbed her more than 30 times. Then, when her kids were sleeping down the hall, he essayed her once more. In the months that followed, Pinkerton was taken into custody, but later freed on the basis of inadequate evidence. 5 months later, Pinkerton essayed and murdered Sherry Welch, a former beauty queen, at the furniture store she managed. Due to further evidence involving a bloody handprint on Sarah Lawrence's tie that matched Pinkerton's, Pinkerton was found guilty and given the death penalty in May 1981 for the murder. Due to a change of venue, the Lawrence murder trial was rescheduled from Amarillo to Corpus Christi. A jury consisting of 7 men and 5 women found Pinkerton guilty on May 30, 1981, and he was given the death penalty. Based on bite marks on Mrs. Welch's chair that matched Pinkerton's tooth impressions, he was found guilty of Sherry Welch's murder in April 1982 and handed a second life sentence. El Paso hosted this trial. 3 days before his scheduled execution, the judge granted Pinkerton a stay. His next date was also stayed 26 minutes before his execution was finally carried out. He was executed by lethal injection on May 15, 1986. Pinkerton ate a breakfast of oatmeal and cream of wheat and drank milk and coffee. Being a Muslim, he refused to eat or drink anything else until after sunset, when he selected a fish sandwich, French fries, and milk as his final meal. His last words were directed to his father, who was a witness in the execution chamber. "Be strong for me. I want you to know I am at peace with myself and with my God." Rudy Ramos Esquivel, June 9, 1986. Esquivel killed 28-year-old Timothy Hearn, an undercover police officer, on June 8, 1978, as he tried to arrest him and 2 women for heroin possession outside a restaurant in the Harrisburg area. Esquivel, who was given a 99-year prison term for gang essay in 1953, had a history of assault, kidnapping, robbery, and burglary that began in his early years. His last words were directed to his friends. "Give my love to everybody. I have fought the good fight." Esquivel took 6 deep breaths, his eyes closed, and there was no further movement. He died at 12:21 a.m. In his last words, he also said that his last meal was very good, but I couldn't find what that actual last meal consisted of. Kenneth Albert Brock, June 19, 1986. Brock was found guilty of shooting 31-year-old 7-Eleven cashier Michael Sedita in 1974. With a criminal record that dated back to his early teens, Brock was perceived as a recluse and a high school dropout. A few weeks prior to the murder, he vanished from his base in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, where he had served as a U.S. Marine. Brock had 6 siblings, and he was the eldest. Brock and a female companion entered a 7-Eleven in Houston on May 21, 1974. In an attempted robbery, Michael Sedita, a store employee, was held at gunpoint. Harris County Sergeant P.M. Hogg arrived on the scene during the heist. Hogg saw the heist taking place while on his early morning rounds. Then Hogg radioed for help. 6 officers engaged Brock when backup arrived. Following a brief altercation, Brock led Sedita to an alleyway behind the store and fatally shot him in the chest. Since that was an old weapon, Brock's defense argued that the gun accidentally discharged. After the police exchanged gunfire, Brock managed to get away. 3 hours later, he was discovered and arrested in a nearby neighborhood. At the time of the crime, Brock was just 25 years old. In 1978, Brock was convicted and given a death sentence. On 2 separate occasions, his defense successfully contested the ruling and secured stays of execution. Both constitutional rights and trial-related technicalities served as the foundation for the appeals. 1 month prior to Brock's execution date, the Supreme Court rejected his appeals on the grounds of a biased jury and insufficient counsel. J. M. Sedita defended his son's murderer by requesting that Brock's sentence be lowered to a life in prison. In order to have Brock's sentence lowered, his prosecutor, George Jacobs, even wrote letters on his behalf. "The death penalty was my choice, But if prison is meant to be a place of rehabilitation, Brock was a huge success and a model prisoner, Jacobs added. On the day of his execution, Brock was strapped to a gurney and given glasses he had requested so that he could see his sister, Nancy Dodson, and her husband, Bobby, as they witnessed the execution. Brock was asked if he wanted to make a final statement. "Now, I'm ready," Brock said, showing no emotion. The convicted killer licked his lips, then looked at the Dodsons. "Take care of yourself, Bob, Nancy." "Thanks," Brock said. He looked up at the ceiling, then said, "Okay, bye." The lethal drugs were then administered, and moments later, Brock began making a snoring sound. His sister called his name 3 times, but Brock did not respond. She again said she loved him, then asked him twice if he could hear her. "He's asleep now," Bobby Dodson said, and moments later, 8 minutes after the lethal dose was administered, Brock was pronounced dead. For his last meal, he ate a cheeseburger, French fries, and he had a soft drink. He spent his final hours writing letters, and prison officials said he was calm. Randy Lynn Wools, August 20, 1986. Wools went inside the Bolero Drive-In Cinema on June 16, 1979, where 44-year-old Betty Stotts was selling movie tickets. After repeatedly stabbing her and hitting her over the head with a tire tool, he lit the booth on fire. After that, he sold tickets to people, stole $600 from the register, then borrowed Stotts' car, drove it into the theater where he was caught. Stotts was still alive when the fire was started, according to an autopsy. It was discovered that Wools had consumed 40 dosages of liquid Valium and he was intoxicated. A former construction worker from Medina, Wools blamed narcotics for his 3-year prison terms and had a slew of prior offenses. When he was just 13, Wools began taking drugs, and he claimed that in order to fund his drug habit, he turned to criminality. Prosecuting attorney Ronald Sutton said that his issues extended beyond drugs. Even as a child, he was caught torturing a lot of animals. He never displayed any feeling or remorse. Because he was so high on Valium, he didn't really recall anything that happened. In his last statements, he said, "I'd like to say goodbye to my family. I love them all. I'd like to tell the people fighting the death penalty to continue their work. I'm sorry about the victim and family, and I wish there was some way I could make it all right." Wools ordered a final meal of 2 cheeseburgers, French fries, and iced tea. Larry Smith, August 22, 1986. For the 1978 robbery slaying of 26-year-old Mike Mason, who was shot in the back of the head when he claimed he was unable to unlock a safe at the Dallas store where he worked, Smith was executed. Mike Mason was killed just 14 months after Smith was paroled from Colorado, where he served less than 3 years of a 30-year prison sentence for a pair of armed robbery convictions. His last words were, "Tell my mother I love her and continue on without me. God bless her. Tell the guys on death row to continue their struggle to get off death row." That's about it. Smith's eyelids twitched a few times as the deadly amount of medicine took effect. Before choking twice and taking a last breath, he coughed loudly 3 times. At 12:24 in the morning, he was declared dead. His execution occurred 3 days before his 31st birthday. There are no records about his final meal. Please hit that subscribe button if you like my channel. See you next time. Bye bye.